"Stay awake for me," Mafia boss whispered to his unconscious maid as he halted a war to save her. The elevator hummed with a vibration that traveled straight up through the soles of Maya Ellis's worn-out sneakers, settling as a dull ache in her lower back. It was 3 a.m. The Harborview Crown Hotel was a vertical palace of glass and steel, piercing the skyline of the city like a needle. But down here in the service lift, it smelled of industrial lemon cleaner and stale coffee. Maya leaned her forehead against the cool metal wall, closing her eyes for exactly 5 seconds. She had to time her rest. If she stopped for longer than 10 seconds, the exhaustion crashing over her like a tidal wave might actually pull her under. She had worked a double shift yesterday, followed by a 4-hour nap, and now she was back for the graveyard rotation because the holiday pay was triple the standard rate. Triple pay meant she could cover the remaining $200 of her mother's insulin prescription. It meant she could send the rent check without holding her breath until it cleared. It meant her younger brother, Sam, would not have to drop his textbooks to pick up a shift at the loading docks. The elevator chimed, a soft, polite sound that seemed too refined for the hour. The door slid open to reveal the 42nd floor. This was not just the top floor. It was a fortress. The entire level was dedicated to a single penthouse suite, the permanent residence of a man the other staff members spoke about only in hushed, nervous whispers in the break room. Adrian Cole. To the public, he was a venture capitalist, a shipping magnate, a philanthropist who donated wings to hospitals and libraries. To the people who actually lived in Harborview, the name Cole meant something else entirely. It meant the black SUVs that idled on street corners. It meant the silence that fell over a restaurant when certain men walked in. It meant power that did not ask for permission. Maya gripped the handle of her cleaning cart and pushed it out into the carpeted hallway. The wheels, usually squeaky, were silent on the plush, dark wool. She'd never seen Adrian Cole face to face. She had seen the back of his bespoke suits on security monitors, or the sleek profile of his car leaving the private garage, but he was a ghost to her, a ghost who paid an exorbitant service fee for discretion and cleanliness. Her instructions were simple. Clean the common areas between 3 and 4 in the morning, when the occupant was invariably out at his clubs or shipping yards. Be invisible. Leave no trace. She keyed the access card into the heavy mahogany double doors. The lock clicked with a heavy, expensive thud. Maya pushed the door open, announcing herself softly just in case. Housekeeping. Silence greeted her. The penthouse was vast, a cavern of modern luxury with floor-to-ceiling windows that offered a panoramic view of the glittering, treacherous city below. The lights were dimmed to a low, ambient gold. Maya let out a breath she did not know she had been holding. He was not here. She parked the cart by the entrance and got to work. Routine was her safety. Routine was how she kept the panic about the eviction notice in her pocket at bay. She started with the surfaces, moving with the efficiency of someone who had cleaned 5,000 rooms in her lifetime. She dusted the marble console tables, wiped down the obsidian countertops in the kitchenette, and straightened the already perfect stack of Architectural Digest magazines. She moved into the main living area, a sunken space dominated by leather furniture and a fireplace that could heat a small house. Maya was halfway to the bookshelf, her feather duster in hand, when a low, baritone voice cut through the silence. "That is the wrong file." Maya froze. The blood drained from her face so fast she felt dizzy. She had not looked toward the corner of the room near the terrace doors. A large oak desk sat there, usually empty. But tonight a lamp cast a pool of stark white light across it. Adrian Cole was sitting there. He was not the polished, untouchable figure she had imagined from the rumors. He looked real, too real. He had discarded his suit jacket, and his white dress shirt was unbuttoned at the collar, the sleeves rolled up to his elbows. The exposed skin of his forearms was covered in intricate, dark ink, tattoos that disappeared under the crisp fabric of his cuffs. 2 other men stood near him, looming like gargoyles. They were huge, their suits straining across broad shoulders, their hands clasped in front of them. They were staring right at her. Maya stood paralyzed, clutching her duster like a pathetic shield. She had violated the cardinal rule: never disturb the guest. Especially this guest. "I am so sorry," she stammered, taking a terrified step back, her heart hammering against her ribs like a trapped bird. "I thought the suite was empty. I will come back later." The two bodyguards shifted, their expressions tightening, ready to intercept her or escort her out. Perhaps roughly. Adrian did not look up immediately. He finished reading a paragraph on the paper in front of him, picked up a heavy fountain pen, and signed his name with a sharp, scratching sound. Then, slowly, he lifted his head. His eyes were dark, intelligent, and terrifyingly calm. They swept over her uniform, her messy bun, her white-knuckled grip on the cleaning supplies. For a second, she thought she was fired. She thought she was dead. "Stay," he said. His voice was not loud, but it carried an absolute authority that stopped her retreat instantly. Maya swallowed hard. "Sir, I said stay," Adrian repeated, his gaze dropping back to the documents. "We are working. You have a job to do. Do it." The bodyguards relaxed slightly, though they kept watching her with the intense focus of predators. "Don't stop," Adrian added, his tone dismissive yet strangely not unkind. "Keep doing your job." Maya nodded jerkily, realizing he was not going to look at her again. She turned back to the shelves, her hands shaking. She had to clean. She had to look normal. She moved to the bar area, where crystal decanters of amber liquid sat on a mirrored tray. Her pulse was thumping so loudly in her ears she could barely hear the scratch of his pen. "Just get through this," she told herself. 10 minutes. Dust, wipe, leave. She reached for a heavy crystal tumbler that had been left on the coaster. It was heavy, weighted at the bottom. Her palms were sweating. As she lifted it to wipe the ring of condensation from the granite, the glass slipped. It happened in slow motion. The slide of smooth crystal against her damp skin. The grasp of her fingers trying to reclaim it. The pull of gravity. The glass hit the marble floor with a sound that cracked through the room like a gunshot. It did not just break. It shattered. Shards of expensive crystal exploded outward, scattering across the dark floor. The silence that followed was deafening. In the corner, the two bodyguards flinched, their hands going instantly to the inside of their jackets. Maya stopped breathing. She stared down at the wreckage, her mind racing with the calculation of the cost. That glass probably cost more than her rent, more than her life. She dropped to her knees, her hands trembling violently as she reached for the jagged pieces. "I am sorry," she whispered, the words choking her. "I am so sorry. I will pay for it. I will fix it." She expected shouting. She expected to be dragged out by the arm. She expected the anger of a man who was used to perfection. "Leave us." The command came from the desk. It was quiet, calm, and cold. Maya flinched, squeezing her eyes shut, thinking he was speaking to her. She waited for the dismissal, for the firing squad of words, but footsteps moved away from her. She opened her eyes to see the two massive bodyguards nodding to Adrian before walking silently out of the penthouse front door, leaving the two of them alone. Maya was still on her knees, a large shard of glass in her hand. She looked up, terrified, to find Adrian standing right in front of her. He had moved across the room with a predator's silence. She had not even heard him leave his chair. He towered over her, blocking out the light from the lamp. Maya flinched back, her breath hitching in her throat. Adrian crouched down. He did not look at the mess on the floor. He looked at her hands. "You are shaking," he observed. It was not an accusation. It was a statement of fact. "I will clean it up," Maya managed to say, her voice trembling as much as her fingers. "Please, sir. I will pay for the replacement. Just please do not report me." Adrian ignored her plea about the money. He reached out, his hand large and warm, and gently took the sharp shard of glass from her fingers. He set it down on the unblemished carpet, well away from her skin. "Stop," he said softly. He stood up, walked to the bar, and grabbed a small towel. He returned and knelt beside her again, ignoring the crease it put in his expensive dress trousers. He began to pick up the larger pieces of glass himself. Maya stared at him, her mouth falling open slightly. The kingpin of Harborview, the man who supposedly ordered hits on his enemies, was on his knees in his own penthouse, picking up broken glass so his maid would not cut herself. "Sir, you cannot," Maya started, reaching out to stop him. He paused, a shard of glass held between his thumb and forefinger. He looked at her then. Really looked at her. His eyes were the color of charred wood, dark and complex. There was a weariness in them that the news cameras never caught. "If you keep trembling like that, you will slice your hand open," Adrian said. "And I do not want blood on my floor tonight. I have seen enough of it." The admission hung in the air, heavy and strange. He finished gathering the large pieces, wrapping them in the towel. Then he stood up and extended a hand to her. Maya stared at it. His palm was broad, his fingers long and capable. Slowly, she placed her hand in his. He pulled her to her feet with an effortless strength that made her feel weightless for a second. "Go finish the library," Adrian said, releasing her hand the moment she was steady. "I will handle this." Maya nodded, unable to form words. She retreated to the library section of the suite, her heart still racing. But the rhythm had changed. It was no longer just fear. It was confusion. And something else. She tried to focus on dusting the high shelves of the bookcase. She stretched up, straining to reach the top molding. Her uniform pulled tight across her shoulders. Suddenly, a presence loomed behind her. "Let me," Maya gasped, spinning around, but he was too close. Adrian had followed her. He reached past her, his arm brushing against her uplifted wrist. For a frozen moment, time suspended itself. He was close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from his chest through the thin cotton of his shirt. He smelled of expensive scotch, old paper, and a dark, spicy cologne that made her head spin. His hand covered hers on the duster for a fraction of a second as he guided it to the spot she had missed. His skin was rougher than she expected, calloused in a way that spoke of violence, not paperwork. Maya looked up, and he looked down. His face was inches from hers. She could see the faint shadow of stubble along his jaw, the slight flare of his nostrils as he inhaled. He was not looking at the shelf anymore. He was looking at her mouth, then her eyes, his gaze heavy and searching. Her breath hitched, a small, audible sound in the quiet room. Adrian froze. His jaw tightened, a muscle feathering in his cheek. He looked like a man fighting a sudden, intense hunger. But then, the mask slammed back into place. He stepped back, putting 3 feet of polite distance between them. "Finish up," he said, his voice rougher than before, "and then go home. It is late." He turned and walked back to his desk without looking back, leaving Maya standing by the bookshelf, her skin tingling where he had brushed against her. The following night, the dynamic of the penthouse had shifted. Maya was not cleaning. She was invisible in the hallway, waiting for the service elevator, her cart parked beside her. The heavy doors of the suite were slightly ajar. Adrian had visitors. Not the silent bodyguards this time, but a man with a sharp, fox-like face and a nervous energy that seeped into the corridor. Maya knew him from the papers. Luca Moretti, Adrian's right hand. The voices drifted out, low but intense. "Vega is pushing too hard. Adrian," Luca hissed. "They burned 2 of the delivery trucks on 4th Street. The drivers are in the hospital. If we do not hit back, we look weak." Maya pressed herself against the wall, clutching her cart handle. She should not be hearing this. "I know what Darian Vega is doing," Adrian's voice replied. "It was steel wrapped in velvet. He wants a war. He wants me to burn down the city to get to him. That is how innocent people die." "Luca, we cannot let this slide," Luca argued. "We will not let it slide," Adrian countered. "But we do not use a hammer when a scalpel will do. Cut off his supply lines in the East Ward. Squeeze his accounts. I want him suffocating. Not bleeding out in the streets. Not yet. Blood, territory, supply lines." The words floated in the air like toxic spores. Maya felt a chill crawl up her spine. Standing in the sterile, beige hallway of the hotel, the reality of Adrian's world crashed into hers. This was not a movie. The man who had gently picked up broken glass the night before was discussing how to dismantle another man's life. She was walking through a battlefield. She just hadn't seen the landmines until now. The elevator finally arrived with a cheerful ding. Maya scrambled inside, jamming the button for the ground floor, desperate to put 40 stories of concrete between herself and the conversation upstairs. Her apartment was in the South End, a neighborhood where the streetlights flickered and the sirens were a constant lullaby. It was small, cramping with the accumulated clutter of two lives, hers and Sam's. Maya flopped onto the sagging beige sofa, not bothering to take off her shoes. She was bone-tired, her feet throbbed. She picked up the remote and clicked on the small television that sat on a milk crate. The local news was on. A reporter stood in front of a familiar warehouse, blue and red lights flashing behind her. Well, police are investigating another suspected arson connected to the ongoing tension between rival criminal organizations in Harborview. Sources link this warehouse to the syndicate controlled by Adrian Cole, the city's untouchable kingpin. The screen cut to a file photo of Adrian. He was wearing a tuxedo, walking out of a courthouse, his face an impassive mask of indifference. The headline beneath him read, "The Shadow over Harborview." Maya stared at the screen. The man in the photo looked cold, cruel. He looked like a monster who ate cities for breakfast. But all she could see was the way his hand had covered hers on the duster, the way he had shielded her from the broken glass, the way he had whispered, "Don't stop. He's dangerous," Maya whispered to the empty room. "He is a criminal." But the fear that should have been there was diluted by something else, confusion, curiosity. She pulled her knees to her chest, watching the news cycle loop. The man on the TV did not match the man who had looked at her with such tired, human eyes, and that discrepancy terrified her more than the guns. A week later, the city felt heavier. The tension in the streets was palpable, a taut wire waiting to snap. Maya was back in the penthouse. It was Tuesday. Adrian was usually at his club on Tuesdays, so she had let her guard down. She was scrubbing the marble vanity in the master bathroom, humming a tune under her breath to fill the silence. She heard the front door open, then slam shut, heavy. Uneven footsteps echoed on the hardwood. Maya froze, towel in hand. She stepped out of the bathroom just as Adrian stumbled into the hallway. He looked wrecked. His suit jacket was gone. His white shirt was untucked and rumpled, the top 3 buttons torn off. He was leaning heavily against the wall, breathing hard, his head hanging low. "Mr. Cole," Maya whispered, stepping forward involuntarily. Adrian's head snapped up. His eyes were wild for a second before they focused on her. He blinked, trying to clear the haze of pain. "Maya." He said her name. He knew her name. The shock of it rooted her to the spot for a moment. Then she saw the dark, wet stain spreading across his white collar. It was blooming fast, soaking into the fabric. "You are bleeding," she murmured. Instinct overrode fear. Maya crossed the distance between them in 3 strides. She reached out, her hands hovering, then gently pressing the clean white towel she was holding against the side of his neck. Adrian hissed in a breath through his teeth, his body tensing like a coiled spring. But he did not pull away. He let his head fall back against the wall, his eyes sliding shut as he surrendered to her touch. "I am fine," he gritted out, though his voice lacked its usual power. "Just a graze. It does not look like a graze," Maya said softly. Her fingers brushed against the warm skin of his throat, feeling the heavy, rapid thud of his pulse beneath. It was racing. He was alive. He was terrified. He was human. Adrian opened his eyes. He looked down at her, his gaze piercing through the exhaustion. For a moment, the rest of the world, the war with Vega, the burnt trucks, the millions of dollars, the FBI, fell away. There was just the quiet hallway, the smell of copper and sweat, and the woman holding a towel to his neck. He looked at her with a raw, naked vulnerability, as if she was the first person in a decade to look at him and see a man instead of a paycheck or a target. "Why are you still here?" he whispered, his voice rough. Maya did not move her hand. She pressed harder, staunching the flow. "Because you are bleeding," she answered simply. The air between them crackled, charged with a terrifying, silent electricity. Maya knew she should run. She knew this man brought nothing but ruin. But as his hand came up, hesitantly, to cover hers on the towel, trapping her fingers against his throat, she did not pull away. She just held on, while the storm outside the windows began to rage. Harborview was burning, piece by piece. It started with the Club Onyx. The venue was a gleaming jewel in the nightlife district, a place where Adrian Cole washed his money through bottles of champagne and VIP tables. On a Tuesday night, a black sedan rolled past the velvet ropes and sprayed the facade with automatic fire. No one was killed, but the message was written in shattered glass and bullet holes. 3 days later, the ground shook. Maya was polishing the brass railing in the lobby of the Crown Hotel when a dull, heavy thud vibrated through the soles of her shoes. It felt like a giant hammer striking the earth. Moments later, the black plume of smoke began to rise 2 blocks away. A car bomb had detonated in a parking garage used by Cole's lieutenants. It had detonated early, destroying an empty level, but the intent was clear. Someone was hunting the hunter. The city, once vibrant and alive, now felt like a cage rattling in the wind. The wail of sirens became the constant soundtrack of Maya's life. Every time an ambulance screamed past the hotel entrance, her heart hammered a frantic rhythm against her ribs, anxiety knotting tightly in her chest. The management called an emergency meeting in the basement laundry sorting room. The general manager, a man whose smile never quite reached his eyes, stood before the assembled housekeeping staff with a clipboard. Due to recent unrest in the city, we are implementing new safety protocols, he announced, his voice clipped. Avoid direct eye contact with VIP guests. If you see anything suspicious, report it to security immediately. Do not engage. Do not investigate. He looked over the tops of his glasses. If anyone feels unsafe in their current assignment, specifically those on the executive floors, you may request a temporary reassignment to the lower guest levels. We understand if the pressure is too much. Maya stared at her hands, her fingers twisting the hem of her apron. Reassignment meant standard rooms. Standard rooms meant standard tips. The guests on the lower floors left $5, maybe $10 if they were feeling generous. The guests in the penthouse left hundreds. She did the math in her head. Her mother's specialist appointment was next week. The copay was $200. Sam needed textbooks for his biology class. The rent was already 3 days late. If she took the reassignment, she was safe. If she took the reassignment, her family drowned. Maya raised her head. She did not raise her hand. She stayed silent, swallowing the fear that tasted like copper in her mouth. She would stay. She had to. 2 nights later, the sky broke open. A torrential storm battered Harborview, rain lashing against the glass skin of the hotel like shrapnel. Thunder rolled constantly, masking the sounds of the city below. Maya was in the penthouse kitchen, organizing the pantry. The lights flickered once, then twice. The power grid struggling under the weight of the storm. In the adjoining living room, the heavy oak doors were closed, but they could not block out the raised voices. Adrian was in there with his inner circle. The meeting had been going on for an hour, the tone shifting from low murmurs to sharp, angry shouts. "We cannot wait!" Adrian, a voice she recognized as Luca, roared. "He is mocking us." "Enough." Adrian's voice cut through. Lower, but infinitely more dangerous. "I said we wait for the shipment to clear customs. If we strike now, we lose the leverage." The lights flickered again, plunging the suite into darkness for a full 3 seconds before the backup generators kicked in with a low hum. Then, a sound cracked through the air that was not thunder. It came from outside, but close. 2 sharp pops, followed by the distinct screech of tires peeling away on wet asphalt. Gunshots. Before Maya could move, the building's emergency system triggered. A siren began to whoop, muffled but urgent, and the magnetic locks on the elevators slammed into place. Lockdown. The double doors to the living room burst open. Maya gasped, dropping the box of tea she was holding. Adrian charged into the kitchen area. He had a gun in his hand, a sleek black pistol held low at his side. His eyes were wide, scanning the room, scanning the windows. "Get down," he barked. Spotting her standing frozen by the island, he did not wait for her to comply. He crossed the distance between them in 2 long strides, grabbing her arm and pulling her down behind the heavy granite counter. "Stay down," he ordered. Maya crouched on the cold tile, her knees knocking together. She was shaking so hard her teeth chattered. Adrian moved to the edge of the kitchen, checking the sightlines to the balcony windows. He moved with a terrifying efficiency, a soldier in a suit. He holstered the weapon at the small of his back when he realized the threat was not inside the room. He turned back to her, seeing her curled into a ball, her arms wrapped around her head. Maya. He said her name firmly. He crouched down beside her, using his body as a shield between her and the expanse of glass that looked out over the city. He placed a hand on her shoulder. His grip was heavy, grounding. "Look at me," he commanded. Maya raised her head. Her eyes were wide, filled with tears of sheer terror. "We are secure," Adrian said, his voice steady. "A rock in the middle of the ocean. The shots were street level. They fired at the lobby entrance. No one is getting up here. The elevators are locked. They fired at the lobby," Maya whispered, her voice cracking. "A warning," Adrian said grimly. "Just a warning." He kept his hand on her shoulder, his thumb rubbing circles into the fabric of her uniform, a subconscious gesture of comfort that felt shockingly intimate in the chaos. They stayed like that for 10 minutes, the Mafia boss shielding the Maid while the sirens wailed below and the rain hammered against the glass. When the all-clear finally chimed through the intercom system, the tension in the room broke, but Maya did not. She tried to stand up, but her legs gave way. She slumped back against the cabinets, her chest heaving. She couldn't get enough air. The room was spinning. Black spots danced in her vision. "Hey," Adrian said, his tone shifting from commander to something softer. He grabbed a stool and pulled it over, guiding her to sit. She was hyperventilating, her breaths coming in short, sharp gasps that sounded like sobs. Her hands were ice cold. Adrian moved into her space. He did not call for security. He did not call for a doctor. He went to the sink, filled a glass with water, and pressed it into her trembling hands. "Drink," he said gently. She couldn't. Her hands were shaking too much. The water sloshed over the rim. Adrian covered her hands with his own, steadying the glass. He guided it to her lips. "Just a sip. There. Now breathe." He pulled the glass away and set it on the counter. He placed his hands on her knees, leaning in until his face was level with hers. "Maya, look at me. Not at the window. Look at me." She focused on him. His eyes were dark, endless and calm. "Breathe with me," he instructed. "In for 4. Out for 4. Do it." He inhaled deeply, exaggerating the motion so she could mimic him. Maya tried. She choked on a sob, then inhaled shakily. "Again," he murmured. "In. Hold. Out." They breathed together in the quiet kitchen, the only sound the hum of the refrigerator and the distant storm. Slowly, the tightness in Maya's chest began to loosen. The room stopped spinning. The terror receded, leaving behind a raw, aching vulnerability. She looked at him. Really looked at him. He was crouching in front of her, his expensive suit straining at the shoulders, his attention entirely focused on her well-being. He looked tired. He looked worried. "I am sorry," she whispered, wiping a tear from her cheek. "I am so sorry. I just panicked." "Do not apologize," Adrian said, his voice low and rough. "You are not built for this world. Maya, you should not have to be." He stood up slowly, his hand lingering on her knee for a fraction of a second before he pulled away, leaving a ghost of warmth behind. An hour later, the storm was still raging, but the penthouse was quiet. The bodyguards and lieutenants had left via the service elevator once the lockdown lifted. Maya was finishing the living room. She should have gone home, but her hands needed to be busy. If she went home to her empty apartment, she would just stare at the ceiling and replay the sound of the gunshots. Adrian was sitting at the bar. He had shed his jacket and tie. His shirt was unbuttoned at the top, revealing the hollow of his throat. He was nursing a tumbler of amber liquid, staring into the glass as if the answers to his problems were drowning in the alcohol. "Why did you stay?" The question startled her. Maya stopped fluffing a cushion and turned. "Sir?" Management offered reassignment, Adrian said. He swirled his drink, the ice clinking softly. I know they did. Henderson is a coward, but he follows protocol. He told you that you could move to the lower floors. Why didn't you take it? Maya hesitated. She could lie. She could say she liked the view. She could say she was dedicated to her job. But after the panic attack, after his hands on her knees, the lie felt wrong. I have bills, she said quietly. Adrian turned on the stool to face her. His expression was unreadable. We all have bills. Maya, not like mine, she answered, a sudden spark of defiance lighting her chest. My mother is sick. My brother is in college, the lower floors. The tips do not cover the insulin. They do not cover the tuition. She took a breath. I stay because they need me to stay. Adrian stared at her for a long moment. Then he stood up and walked around the bar. He did not stop until he was standing directly in front of her. Loyalty, he murmured. Not to you, she said quickly, then bit her lip, afraid she had overstepped. A faint, humorless smile touched the corner of his mouth. No, not to me. That makes it more honest. He stepped closer. He was so close now that she could smell the whiskey on his breath, mixed with that sandalwood scent that seemed to cling to his skin. You are risking your life for them, he said softly. I do what I have to do, Maya replied, looking up at him. Her heart was pounding, but not from fear this time. It was a different kind of adrenaline. Adrian studied her face. His gaze traced the line of her jaw, the curve of her cheekbone. I do not remember the last time someone stood by me who was not on the payroll, he admitted. His voice was a low rumble, vibrating in the air between them. Everyone I know is either afraid of me or they want something from me. Usually both. He looked incredibly lonely then, the king on his throne, ruling over a kingdom of ash. Maya felt a pull in her chest, a dangerous tug of empathy. Without thinking, she reached out. She rested her hand on his forearm, his muscles bunched beneath her touch. Hard as iron. You are human. Adrian, she whispered. People forget that. Maybe you forget it too. Adrian looked down at her hand on his arm, slowly, deliberately. He covered her hand with his own. His fingers were warm, rough, and strong. He wrapped them around hers, trapping her palm against his skin. He stepped in, invading her personal space completely. Maya had to tilt her head back to maintain eye contact. I forget a lot of things lately, he murmured. His thumb began to trace the line of her knuckles, back and forth, a slow, hypnotic rhythm. The sensation sent shivers cascading down her spine. The air in the room grew heavy, thick with unspoken desire. Adrian lowered his head, his eyes dropped to her lips. Maya's breath hitched. She watched his pupils dilate. She saw the hunger there, raw and undisguised. He leaned in. She leaned in. The world narrowed down to the heat of his body and the movement of his thumb on her hand. Their noses almost brushed. She could feel the warmth of his breath on her lips. All she had to do was close the gap. Just 1 inch. Then reality crashed back in. She was the maid. He was the boss. He was a criminal. She was a girl trying to keep her brother in school. Maya pulled back. It took every ounce of her willpower. I have to go, she stammered, her face burning. My shift is over. She pulled her hand from his. Adrian did not try to stop her. He let her slip away, his hand remaining suspended in the air for a second before falling to his side. His eyes were burning, dark fires that promised everything and nothing. Go, he said, roughy. Before I change my mind. Maya turned and fled. She practically ran to the service elevator, her heart hammering a frantic rhythm against her ribs. The war did not wait for romance. It did not wait for hesitation. 2 days later, Darian Vega made his move. It was a brutal, calculated ambush. A coal syndicate warehouse near the waterfront was hit just after midnight. Vega's men used incendiary rounds. The structure burned for 6 hours. When the smoke cleared, 2 of Adrian's soldiers were found dead in the ruins. The response was swift and terrifying. Adrian did not hide behind shell companies this time. He struck back with the ruthless efficiency that had earned him his crown. By the next morning, the coal organization had seized control of one of Vega's primary shipping docks. The men guarding it had been hospitalized. The violence spilled out of the shadows and onto the front pages. Gang war erupts in Harborview. The headlines screamed. Police commissioner promises crackdown. The atmosphere in the hotel changed. It was no longer just tense. It was poisonous. Staff members whispered in huddles in the locker room. "I am quitting." A maid named Sarah whispered to Maya as they restocked towels. "My cousin said the police are going to raid the hotel. I cannot get arrested. Maya, I have kids." Maya stayed silent, stacking the white cotton with mechanical precision. She could not quit. She checked her bank balance on her phone during her break. She was still $300 short for the month. Later that afternoon, her phone buzzed in her pocket. It was Sam. "Maya?" His voice was tinny and anxious. "Are you okay?" "I saw the news. They said there was a shooting near the hotel. I am fine. Sam," Maya lied, clutching the phone tight. "It was blocks away. The news always exaggerates. You are working for him, aren't you?" Sam asked, his voice dropping. "That guy, Cole, the one they are talking about, he's just a guest. Sam, he's a criminal. Maya, please, just come home. Mom misses you. I miss you. We can figure out the money. I will take a semester off." "No," Maya said sharply. "No, Sam, you stay in school. That is the deal. I am fine. It is just a hotel. It is the safest place in the city." She looked out the window of the break room. The city lights were flickering on as twilight fell. Harborview looked beautiful from a distance, a glittering jewel box, but from where she stood, it felt like the jaws of a trap slowly grinding shut. "I have to go. Sam, I love you." She hung up before he could argue, staring at her reflection in the darkened glass. She looked tired. She looked like a liar. It was near the end of her shift when she found it. She was doing a final sweep of the penthouse bar area. Adrian was not there, or so she thought. She knelt down to wipe a smudge from the chrome footrest of a bar stool. There, lying on the dark carpet, was a cufflink. It was gold, heavy, and engraved with a small, intricate crest. It looked old, valuable. Maya picked it up, the metal cool against her palm. As she stood up, she gasped. Adrian was standing right there. He had entered the room silently, a ghost in his own castle. He was watching her. He looked exhausted, his eyes rimmed with red, his jaw set with the tension of a man who had spent the day ordering violence. "I found this," Maya said, her voice trembling slightly. "Under the stool." She held out her hand. The gold glinted in the dim light. Adrian stepped closer. He did not take the cufflink immediately. He looked at it, then up at her face. "My father's," he said quietly. "I thought I lost it." He reached out. But he did not just take the object. His hand cupped hers from underneath, his fingers long and warm. He used his other hand to pick up the cufflink from her palm. For a moment, he held her hand in both of his. "Thank you," he said. He stepped closer again. He was invading her space, just like the night of the storm. But this time, there was no lightning to blame. There was only the heavy, suffocating tension of two people standing on the edge of a cliff. His thumb brushed across the sensitive skin of her palm, a feather-light touch that sent a shockwave straight to her core. "Maya," he whispered. He was too close. He was dangerous. He was everything she should run from. But she did not move. She stared up at him, her lips parting slightly, caught in the gravitational pull of his darkness. His eyes flickered down to her mouth. He leaned in, just an inch. The air between them crackled. "Sir, I—" Adrian did not back away this time. He held her gaze, his thumb pressing into her palm, anchoring her to him. "Be careful, Maya," he said, his voice a low warning that sounded terrifyingly like affection. "This city is getting dark. Do not let it swallow you." He released her hand slowly, letting his fingers trail off her fingertips. Maya pulled her hand back against her chest, her heart racing as if she had just run a marathon. She nodded, unable to speak, and turned to leave, feeling his eyes burning into her back until the elevator doors slid shut, sealing her away from the fire. The smoke rising from the garment district was not gray. It was a thick, oily black that blotted out the midday sun. twisting like a serpent between the skyscrapers. From the floor-to-ceiling windows of the 42nd floor, it looked like a bruise spreading across the sky. Adrian Cole stood with his forehead resting against the cool glass, his hands clasped loosely behind his back. To a casual observer, he looked like a man contemplating the weather. To Maya, who was dusting the intricate wood carvings of the fireplace mantel 10 feet away, he looked like a man watching his kingdom crumble. The fire was at Sal's, a family-run bistro that had been under the protection of the Cole Syndicate for 30 years. It was neutral ground. It was a place where families ate Sunday dinner. Now, it was a charred skeleton. Maya paused, her hand tightening on the duster. She watched Adrian's reflection in the mirror above the mantel. His face was a mask of stone, but his eyes were alive with a cold, terrifying fury. Darian Vega was not just attacking soldiers anymore. He was attacking the infrastructure of Adrian's influence, burning down the businesses that paid for safety they were no longer receiving. Adrian turned away from the window abruptly, the movement sharp enough to make Maya flinch. He walked past her without a word, but the air around him felt superheated, crackling with invisible voltage. He slammed the heavy oak door of his study shut, sealing himself in with his war. Maya let out a breath she had been holding. The penthouse, usually a sanctuary of silence and order, now felt like the eye of a hurricane. The pressure was dropping, and the walls were closing in. Later that afternoon, the reality of that pressure became audible. Maya was taking the back route to the laundry chutes, navigating the narrow service corridor that ran behind the guest suites. The lighting here was harsh, fluorescent white, buzzing with a low, irritating hum that grated on her nerves. She turned the corner and nearly collided with a wall of a man. It was Adrian, who was pacing the narrow hallway, a phone pressed to his ear, his other hand raking through his dark hair, leaving it standing up in disordered spikes. He had abandoned his jacket somewhere, and his shirt was sweat-stained at the collar. "Get them out," Adrian barked into the phone. His voice was not the smooth, controlled baritone she was used to. It was ragged. "I do not care what it costs. Luca, move the families. All of them, the Rossi family, the drivers, the kitchen staff, everyone." He stopped pacing and leaned his shoulder against the concrete wall, looking down at the scuffed linoleum. "They have kids." "Luca," he said, his voice dropping to a raw whisper that tore at Maya's heart, "I promised them safety. If Vega touches one of those children because of a debt I owe, I will burn this entire city to the ground myself. Get them to the safe houses in the north, tonight." Maya pressed herself against the service carts, trying to make herself small. She had seen the headlines, she had seen the fear in the streets, but she had never seen this. This was not a kingpin protecting his gold. This was a man desperately trying to shield people from a monster he had helped create. The weight of it, the lives, the families, the promises, seemed to be crushing him physically. His shoulders were slumped, his head bowed under the invisible burden. He ended the call and lowered the phone. He closed his eyes for a second, inhaling a shaky breath. When he opened them, he saw her. Maya froze. Adrian stared at her. For a moment, she thought he would be angry that she had overheard his desperation, but the anger did not come. Instead, a look of profound exhaustion washed over his features. "You should not be here, Maya," he said quietly. "I was just taking the linens down," she stammered, gesturing to the bundle in her arms. "Go home," he said. "Go home and lock your door." He pushed off the wall and walked past her toward the elevators. As he passed, she could smell the smoke on his clothes, clinging to him like a second skin. The request came 2 days later. Mrs. Higgins, the head of housekeeping, cornered Maya in the linen room. Mrs. Higgins was a woman who viewed dust as a personal insult and tardiness as a moral failing. But today she looked frantic. "I need you for the gala tonight. Ellis," she said, checking a clipboard. Maya shook her head immediately. "No, Mrs. Higgins. I can't. I have a double shift tomorrow, and it is the Children's Hospital Charity Gala." "Mrs. Higgins interrupted. "The hotel is hosting. We are short 3 servers. The agency girls canceled. It is a black tie event. The tips are pooled, but the overtime is double, plus a bonus from the event coordinator." Maya paused, A bonus. She thought of the red letter from the electric company sitting on her kitchen counter. She thought of the sound of her mother's cough through the thin walls of their apartment. She thought of Sam eating instant noodles for the 5th night in a row. "How much is the bonus?" Maya asked. $200. Cash. Tonight. Maya closed her eyes. $200 was the difference between lights and darkness. "I will do it," she said. The grand ballroom of the Harborview Crown Hotel was a cavern of crystal and gold. Chandeliers the size of small cars hung from the vaulted ceiling, dripping light onto the polished dance floor. The air smelled of expensive perfume, roasted duck, and money. Maya smoothed the skirt of her uniform. It was different from her housekeeping grays. It was a simple black dress, knee-length, with a high collar and long sleeves. Her hair was pinned back severely, not a strand out of place. She held a silver tray of champagne flutes, her fingers gripping the metal tight enough to turn her knuckles white. The room was filled with the city's elite, politicians, tech moguls, old money families who pretended the war in the streets was just a rumor. A string quartet played something light and airy in the corner, struggling to be heard over the roar of conversation. And then he walked in. The crowd seemed to part like the Red Sea. Adrian Cole entered from the main foyer, flanked by his security detail. Though they hung back at a respectful distance, Maya had seen him in suits before. She'd seen him in shirt sleeves, but she had never seen him like this. He was wearing a tuxedo that fit him with lethal precision. The black fabric absorbed the light, making him look sharper, darker than anyone else in the room. The bow tie was black silk. He moved with a predator's grace, shaking hands, nodding, smiling a smile that did not reach his eyes. He looked like a prince of the city. He looked untouchable. Maya stood by a pillar near the bar, frozen. She felt like a moth looking at a flame that could incinerate her in a second, as if feeling her gaze. Adrian turned. He scanned the room, his eyes skimming over the senators and the heiresses without interest. Then his gaze locked onto the pillar. He saw her. He stopped mid-stride. The polite, plastic smile vanished from his face. For a heartbeat, the noise of the gala faded into a dull roar. It was just him and her, separated by 50 feet of polished floor and $1 million of social standing. His expression softened. The hard lines around his mouth relaxed. A look of genuine recognition, of warmth, flooded his eyes. It was a look that said, "I know you." It was a look that said, "I am glad you are here." Maya felt a blush rise up her neck, heating her skin. She tightened her grip on the tray to stop it from shaking. He looked at her not as a server, but as a secret. An electrifying connection arc between them, invisible and dangerous. Then, a man in a gray suit clapped Adrian on the shoulder, breaking the spell. Adrian blinked, the mask sliding back into place, and turned back to the donor, but not before sending one last lingering glance in her direction. The tension in the room shifted an hour later. Maya was collecting empty glasses near the VIP tables when the atmosphere suddenly curdled. The laughter died down in ripples, silence spreading outward from the entrance. Darian Vega had arrived. He was not supposed to be there. He was not on the list. But men like Darian Vega did not need invitations. He walked in with a swagger that bordered on theatrical, wearing a white dinner jacket that stood out violently against the sea of black tuxedos. He was smiling. It was a shark smile, all teeth and no humor. Maya watched, her heart hammering, as Vega walked straight toward Adrian. The crowd watched with bated breath. Everyone knew the rumors. Everyone knew these two men were currently tearing the city apart. Adrian stood his ground. He did not look surprised. He set his drink down on a passing waiter's tray and turned to face his enemy. "Darian," Adrian said. His voice was calm, carrying easily over the hushed room. "I did not know you had a charitable side." "I am a man of the people, Adrian," Vega replied, his voice oily and smooth. "I worry about the children, just like you." The threat was subtle, buried in the pleasantry, but it landed like a physical blow. Vega stepped closer, invading Adrian's personal space. Maya was standing 6 feet away. She could see the way Adrian's hand flexed at his side, a reflex to reach for a weapon that wasn't there. She could see the cold, dead look in Vega's eyes. "Nice party," Vega said, looking around. "Be a shame if something disrupted it. Enjoy the evening." "Darian," Adrian said, his voice dropping to a temperature below freezing. "While it lasts." Vega laughed, a sharp, barking sound, and moved past him toward the bar. Adrian did not move. He stood rigid, radiating a wave of suppressed violence that made the hair on Maya's arm stand up. She realized with terrifying clarity that violence could erupt right here, under the crystal chandeliers. These men did not care about collateral damage. She turned and hurried toward the service exit, her hands trembling so badly the empty glasses on her tray rattled like chattering teeth. The rooftop garden was empty. Maya pushed the heavy glass door open and stepped out into the cool night air. The wind was picking up, rustling the leaves of the potted olive trees and sending the scent of rain and ozone swirling around her. She needed to breathe. The air in the ballroom had become too thin, too choked with tension. She walked to the stone railing and looked out over the city. From up here, Harbor View looked peaceful, a grid of amber light stretching to the black water of the bay. It was a lie, of course. Down there, in the shadows, men were burning restaurants and planning murders. It is a beautiful view, isn't it? Maya gasped and spun around. Adrian was standing in the shadow of a trellis covered in jasmine vines. He had come out the other door. He had lost the tuxedo jacket. His bow tie was undone, hanging loose around his collar, and the top buttons of his shirt were open. He held a tumbler of whiskey in one hand, but he wasn't drinking it. "Mr. Cole," Maya breathed, I did not know you were out here. I can leave." "No," he said quickly. "Please, stay." He walked out of the shadows and joined her at the railing. He looked weary, the charisma of the ballroom stripped away to reveal the bone-deep exhaustion beneath. "I needed to get away from them," he admitted, looking out at the skyline. "The sharks in expensive suits, they smile at you while they calculate how much your funeral will cost. They are afraid of you," Maya said softly. Adrian laughed, a short, dry sound. "Good. Fear is the only thing keeping order right now. But I am tired. Maya." He turned his head to look at her. The wind caught a lock of her hair that had escaped her pins, blowing it across her cheek. "I look at that city," he said, gesturing with his glass, "and I do not see my empire anymore. I see a cage, every day. The walls get higher. This war, it is eating away at everything. Any chance I ever had at a normal life is turning to ash." Maya looked at him. He wasn't the kingpin in that moment. He was just a man standing on a ledge, looking for a way down. "You are saving people," she said. "I heard you, in the hallway, moving the families." Adrian looked surprised. "You heard that?" "Yes, you are trying to protect them." "I am failing," he whispered. He set his glass down on the wide stone ledge. He turned his body fully toward her. The garden lights were dim, casting half his face in shadow, but his eyes were burning with an intensity that pinned her to the spot. He reached out. His hand hovered for a second, asking permission, before his fingertips grazed the side of her face. He tucked the loose strand of hair behind her ear. His skin was warm against hers. His fingers trailed down, grazing the sensitive skin of her neck, sending a shiver racing down her spine that had nothing to do with the wind. "Why are you out here, Maya?" he asked softly. "I needed air," she whispered. Her pulse was racing, a frantic drumbeat in her throat. "I think about you," Adrian confessed. His voice was low, rough with an emotion she couldn't name. "When I am in those meetings, when the world feels too dark to navigate, I think about you standing in my kitchen telling me to breathe." He took a step closer. There was no space left between them. He placed one hand at the small of her back. The contact was electric. He drew her carefully toward him, giving her time to pull away. Maya did not pull away. She flattened her palms against his chest. She could feel the solid wall of muscle beneath the fine cotton of his shirt. She could feel the heavy, pounding rhythm of his heart. It was beating as fast as hers. "Adrian," she breathed. He tilted his head. His gaze dropped to her lips. "I need to know," he whispered. He leaned down. Their lips met. It was not the frantic, desperate kiss of a movie. It was slow, deliberate. It was a question and an answer all at once. His lips were firm, warm, and tasted faintly of whiskey. Maya made a soft sound in her throat, her hands sliding up his chest to grip his shoulders. The movement seemed to break the last of his restraint. Adrian groaned low in his chest. His arm around her waist tightened, pulling her flush against him. He tilted his head, deepening the kiss, pressing harder. It was overwhelming. It was the feeling of falling and being caught at the same time. His hand moved up her back, his fingers tangling in the hair at the nape of her neck. He kissed her with a controlled intensity, as if he was terrified that if he let go, he would shatter her. Maya opened to him, kissing him back with a fierce need she didn't know she possessed. For a moment, the war didn't exist. Vega didn't exist. The debt didn't exist. There was only the heat of his body, the roughness of his stubble against her skin, and the way he held her like she was the only precious thing left in the world. They broke apart. Gasping for air, they stayed close, foreheads touching, eyes closed. Maya could feel his breath on her face. She was trembling. "We can't," she whispered, though she didn't move an inch. "I know," Adrian rasped. This crossed a line. A massive, dangerous line. He was the target. She was the help. This was how people got hurt. The silence of the garden was shattered by a vibration. Adrian's phone buzzed violently against the stone railing where he had left it. The sound was like a gunshot in the quiet air. They sprang apart, the loss of contact physically painful. Adrian snatched the phone up. He looked at the screen, and the softness vanished from his face instantly. The cold, hard mask slammed back down. "Luca," he answered. Maya watched him, hugging her arms around herself, trying to hold on to the warmth he had left behind. "Where?" Adrian barked. He listened for a second, his jaw clenching. "Understood. I am coming down." He hung up and turned to Maya. The tenderness was gone, replaced by sharp, terrifying urgency. "Go inside," he ordered. "Adrian, go back inside. Maya, right now. Take the service elevator, go to the locker room, change, and go home. Do not take the main exit. Use the loading dock on 5th. "What is happening?" she asked, fear spiking in her chest. One of Vega's men was spotted near the kitchen entrance. Adrian said grimly. He turned to leave, then stopped. He looked back at her, and for a split second, the mask cracked again. Fear. Pure, unadulterated fear for her. "Please, Maya, go." He turned and ran toward the stairs, his tuxedo tails flying behind him, plunging back into the war he had tried to escape for 5 minutes. Maya did not sleep that night. She lay in her narrow bed in her tiny apartment, staring at the water stains on the ceiling. The city outside was quiet, but her mind was loud. She raised her hand and touched her lips. They still felt swollen, sensitive. She could still feel the phantom pressure of his mouth. She could still feel the weight of his hand on the small of her back. It was exhilarating. It was the most alive she had ever felt, and it was terrifying. She closed her eyes and saw his face in the moonlight. "I think about you when the world feels too dark." He was in trouble, and now she was in it with him, across the city, in the back room of a warehouse that smelled of stale cigars and gasoline. Adrian Cole sat at a metal table. Luca was pacing in front of him. "They are squeezing the suppliers." "Adrian!" Luca shouted, slamming his hand on the table. "The concrete shipments for the waterfront project have been halted. The city inspector was bribed to shut down the construction on the west side. Vega is not just shooting at us anymore. He's starving us out." "I know," Adrian said quietly. "We have to hit the distribution hub," Luca argued. "The big one on 9th. We blow that, and Vega loses his liquid cash. He will be crippled. It is too close to the tenements." Adrian said the blast radius would take out the apartment block next door. "So?" Luca threw his hands up. "This is war. Adrian, people die in wars. If we do not strike now, we are dead men walking." Adrian looked at the map spread out on the table. He looked at the location of the distribution hub. He thought of the families living in the building next door. He thought of mothers. He thought of brothers. He thought of Maya. If he escalated this to mass violence, the city would turn into a slaughterhouse, and a maid taking the bus home would be nothing but collateral damage. No, Adrian said. Adrian, I said no, Adrian roared, standing up and kicking his chair back. We do not touch the civilians. Find another way, Luca. He walked out of the warehouse into the night. He looked at his hands. They were shaking. Not from fear, but from the memory of how perfectly they had fit around her waist. He was hesitating, and in his world, hesitation was a death sentence. The night the city finally broke, it sounded like thunder, but the sky was clear. The thunder was man-made. Darian Vega did not just strike. He swarmed in a coordinated assault that unfolded over 20 horrifying minutes. 5 different locations associated with the coal syndicate were hit simultaneously. A betting parlor in the East End, a shipping office by the docks, a storage facility, and Little Italy, a small corner cafe where Adrian's soldiers often drank espresso and played cards. The gunmen sprayed the cafe from a passing van. It was messy. It was brutal. And this time, the bullets did not discriminate. The security footage leaked within the hour. It was grainy and silent, but the image was unmistakable. A young barista, a girl no older than 20, crumpling behind the counter as glass shattered around her. The city of Harborview did not sleep that night. Outrage poured through social media like gasoline. The police commissioner held a press conference at 3 a.m, his face grim, promising justice. The city was a powder keg, and Darian Vega had just lit the fuse. Adrian stood in the center of his war room, the converted library of the penthouse. The screens on the wall played the loop of the cafe attack. He watched the girl fall, again and again. His hands were gripping the edge of the mahogany table so hard the wood creaked. A vein throbbed in his temple. He was not a man prone to outbursts, but the air around him vibrated with a cold, lethal fury. They killed a civilian, he said, his voice dangerously quiet. She was in the way, Luca said. He was standing by the window, checking the clip of his pistol. This is what happens. Adrian, Vega does not care about rules. We had rules. Adrian slammed his fist onto the table. We keep the violence in the family. That was the deal. The deal is dead, Luca shouted, turning to face him. He's hitting us everywhere. The men are restless. They want blood for the cafe crew. We have to hit back, and we have to hit back hard. What is the target? Adrian asked, though he already knew the answer. The distribution hub on 9th, Luca said. We rig it. We blow it. We take out his cash flow and half his lieutenants in one strike. And the apartment complex next door, Adrian asked, the one full of families sleeping in their beds? Luca hesitated. Collateral damage. If we do not do this, Adrian, there won't be a syndicate left to protect anyone. Adrian looked back at the screen. The barista falling, the innocent life snuffed out for a territory dispute. He felt sick. He felt cornered. If he hit the hub, he became the monster the news said he was. If he didn't, Vega would keep killing until there was nothing left. Prepare the team, Adrian said, his voice hollow, but wait for my order. Do not detonate anything until I say so. Luca nodded, relief flooding his face. Understood. Downstairs, in the housekeeping office, Maya stood in front of Mrs. Higgins' desk. She was twisting her hands together, her stomach churning with nausea. I can't go back up there. Mrs. Higgins, Maya said, her voice trembling. Please, put me on the 2nd floor. Put me in the laundry room. I don't care about the money anymore. Mrs. Higgins looked up from her schedule, her glasses sliding down her nose. We have been over this. Ellis, we are short-staffed. 3 girls quit this morning after the news about the cafe. I want to quit too, Maya whispered. You can't. Mrs. Higgins said flatly. You signed a contract, and besides, Mr. Cole requested you. Maya froze. He did? He called down personally, said he only trusts the current staff. He doesn't want new faces in the suite. Security reasons. Maya felt a trap closing around her. He trusted her. After the night in the garden, after the kiss that still burned on her lips, he trusted her not to betray him. If she left now, She was abandoning him, and strangely, guiltily. That thought hurt more than the fear of the bullets. "I will go," Maya said quietly, "but just for tonight." The penthouse was quiet when she entered. The war room doors were closed, muffling the strategizing inside. Maya moved to the kitchen. Routine was her armor. If she just cleaned the counters, if she just organized the spice rack, maybe the world would make sense again. She was wiping down the granite island when the elevator chime sounded. It wasn't the main elevator. It was the service lift. Maya looked up, frowning. She hadn't called it. The doors slid open. 3 men in blue coveralls with city maintenance stitched on the pockets stepped out. They were carrying toolboxes. They wore caps pulled low. Maya didn't recognize them. And then she saw their boots. They weren't work boots. They were tactical combat boots, laced tight. "Hey!" one of them shouted, spotting her. Maya dropped her spray bottle. She didn't think. She dove. She scrambled behind the heavy granite island just as the first gunshot cracked through the air. The sound was deafening in the enclosed space. The bullet shattered the glass backsplash above the stove, raining shards down on the counter. "Get the girl!" a voice roared. Then the alarm screamed to life. The doors to the war room burst open. Adrian came out first. He didn't hesitate. He moved with a terrifying fluidity, gun raised, firing 2 shots in rapid succession. The lead intruder dropped, clutching his leg. The other 2 returned fire, spraying the hallway with bullets. The noise was a physical assault, a chaotic cacophony of explosions and shattering porcelain. Maya pressed her hands over her ears, curled into a ball on the kitchen floor. She was sobbing, but the sound was lost in the gunfire. "Left flank!" Adrian shouted to his men. "Secure the corridor!" The firefight was brutal and fast. Adrian's bodyguards poured out of the library, engaging the intruders. Furniture splintered. A priceless vase exploded into dust. One of Vega's men, the one Adrian had missed, broke away from the main group. He sprinted toward the kitchen, looking for cover. He hurdled the island and landed right next to Maya. He was huge, smelling of sweat and gun oil. He saw her. His eyes went wide. He raised his pistol, pointing it directly at her chest. Maya's brain shut down. Fight or flight. There was nowhere to fly. She grabbed the heavy crystal flower vase sitting on the floor where she had placed it to clean. With a scream of pure terror, she swung it upward with both hands. It connected with the gunman's arm just as he pulled the trigger. The shot went wild, punching a hole in the ceiling. The man howled in pain, staggering back. Adrian appeared at the entrance of the kitchen. He saw the gunman. He saw Maya. "No!" he roared. He didn't shoot. The gunman was too close to her. Adrian holstered his weapon and threw himself forward, tackling the man with the force of a freight train. They crashed to the floor, a tangle of limbs and fury. The gun skittered away across the tiles. Maya scrambled backward, trying to get away. The gunman pulled a second weapon from his boot, a small, silver revolver. He raised it, aiming for Adrian's back. Maya saw it. Adrian didn't. "Adrian!" she screamed. She lunged forward, not thinking, just reacting. She shoved Adrian's shoulder, trying to push him out of the line of fire. The gun went off. The sound was different this time. Dull, wet. Maya felt a punch to her chest. It didn't hurt. Not at first. It just felt like someone had hit her with a hammer. She stumbled back. Her legs felt like water. She looked down. A red flower was blooming on her white uniform shirt. It was growing fast, spreading dark and wet across her ribs. "Oh!" she whispered. She looked up. Adrian had subdued the man, snapping his arm with a sickening crunch. He turned, his face triumphant, ready to check on her. "Maya?" He saw the blood. The triumph vanished. His face went white, not pale, white, as if his own heart had stopped beating. Maya collapsed. The world went soft and gray. The sounds of the dying gunfight in the hallway sounded like they were underwater. Maya hit the floor. It was cold. Suddenly, hands were on her, frantic, desperate hands. "Maya, look at me, look at me." Adrian was there. He was hovering over her, his face a blur of panic. He pressed his hands onto her chest. The pressure was agony. She gasped, a wet, gurgling sound. "I got you," he was saying, his voice cracking. "I got you. Do not close your eyes." He ripped off his dress shirt, not bothering with the buttons, tearing the fabric. He bunched it up and pressed it against the wound. The pain was starting now. It was a hot, searing iron branding her skin. "Adrian," she tried to say, but no sound came out. "Shh! Save your breath," he ordered. He looked up, screaming over his shoulder. "Medic! Get a medic in here now!" But the elevators were locked down. The streets were blocked. Adrian looked down at her. He saw her eyes fluttering. He saw the gray cast of her skin. He made a decision. He scooped her up. He lifted her into his arms as if she weighed nothing. He stood up. Ignoring the blood soaking into his own undershirt, he ran. He ran through the ruined penthouse, past the shattered glass, past the subdued gunmen. He kicked open the door to the private elevator, the one that ran on a separate grid. He punched the emergency override code with a bloody thumb. "Hang on," he whispered, rocking her slightly. "Hang on, Maya." The elevator plummeted toward the ground floor. Adrian fell to his knees, cradling her on the plush carpet. He pulled his phone out, his fingers slipping on the screen. "Get an ambulance to the loading dock." He barked into the phone. "I do not care about the police. Get them there now." Maya's head lulled against his shoulder. The lights of the elevator panel were blurring into streaks of gold. She felt cold, so cold. "Stay awake for me." "Maya," Adrian begged. He pressed his forehead against hers. "Stay with me. Do not you dare leave me. I forbid it. You hear me? I forbid it." She tried to smile. She wanted to tell him he couldn't order death away like he ordered his soldiers, but the darkness was pulling at her, heavy and sweet. The elevator doors opened onto the loading dock. The cold night air hit them. Luca was there, waiting by the black SUV. "Boss," he said, "running up. We have reports. Vega is hitting the south side. The team is ready to blow the hub. We just need the order." Adrian looked down at the woman in his arms. Her breath was shallow. Her blood was on his hands. His war had done this. His escalation, his pride. If he blew the hub, the ambulances would be tied up, the streets would be gridlocked, the chaos would consume the city, and she would die in the back of a car. "Call it off," Adrian said. Luca froze. "What?" "Call it off," Adrian screamed, his voice echoing off the concrete walls. "Stand down, all units, cease fire." "But boss, Vega will—" "I do not care about Vega," Adrian roared. "Tell everyone to stop shooting. I want these streets clear. I want a path for the ambulance. Anyone who fires a shot tonight answers to me." Luca stared at him, stunned. Then he looked at Maya. He nodded once, pulled out his radio, and began shouting orders. The sirens arrived 3 minutes later. The police swarmed the alley first. Guns drawn, they saw the most dangerous man in the city kneeling on the pavement, holding a bleeding woman, surrounded by his soldiers who had their weapons holstered. Adrian didn't look at the police. He didn't look at the guns pointed at him. "Over here!" he shouted at the paramedics who were jumping out of the ambulance. They rushed forward. "Sir, you have to let her go," a paramedic said, trying to pull Maya from his arms. Adrian held on for a second longer. He looked at her face. She was translucent, her lips blue. He leaned down. His lips brushed her ear. "Stay awake for me," he whispered. It was a prayer. It was a command. It was a confession. He let her go. The paramedics swarmed her. They cut her shirt open. They intubated her right there on the pavement. Adrian stood up. He was covered in her blood. His hands, his chest, his trousers. A police officer moved toward him. "Handcuffs out. Mr. Cole, put your hands behind your back." Adrian didn't resist. He didn't even seem to notice them. He just watched the ambulance doors slam shut. He watched the lights flash as it sped away into the night, a night he had made silent so she could live. He stood in the middle of the wreckage of his life. The kingpin who had just surrendered his crown for a maid, and for the first time in his life. He didn't care about the empire. He only cared if she would wake up. The sterile air of Harborview General Hospital smelled of antiseptic and floor wax, a sharp contrast to the smoke and gunpowder that had filled the penthouse only hours before. The 4th floor of the surgical wing was quiet, but it was a heavy, guarded silence. Adrian Cole stood at the nurse's station, his dress shirt torn and stained with dried blood that was not his own. He looked like a man who had walked out of a burning building, yet his voice was calm, carrying the terrifying authority that had ruled the city's underworld for a decade. "She is not Maya Ellis," Adrian said, sliding a thick envelope across the counter toward the terrified administrator. "Her name is Clara Vance. She is a private consultant from out of state. There is no police record." There was no gunshot wound report. It was an accident involving industrial equipment. The administrator looked at the envelope, then at the two massive men standing behind Adrian, their arms crossed and eyes hidden behind sunglasses despite the fluorescent lights. He swallowed hard and typed the name Clara Vance into the system. "Understood. Mr. Cole, we will update the chart. I have a private security team arriving in 10 minutes. Adrian continued. "They will take over the corridor. No one enters room 412 without my direct approval. Not a doctor, not a nurse, not the police commissioner himself. Do you understand?" "Yes, sir. Of course." Adrian turned and walked away without another word. He had just committed 3 felonies in under a minute: bribery, obstruction of justice, and falsifying medical records. But he did not care. Darian Vega knew who Maya was now. Vega had sent men to the hotel specifically to kill her, to break Adrian by destroying the only thing that made him human. If Vega found out she was alive, he would finish the job. Adrian reached the door of room 412. He hesitated, his hand hovering over the handle. The man who had halted a citywide war with a single phone call was suddenly terrified to open a door. He took a breath, a jagged intake of air that rattled in his chest, and pushed inside. The room was dim, lit only by the green glow of the heart monitor and the streetlights filtering through the blinds. Maya lay in the center of the bed, looking impossibly small. A tube ran down her throat, breathing for her. Wires snaked from her chest, disappearing under the hospital gown. Her skin was the color of parchment. Adrian closed the door and locked it. He walked to the chair beside the bed, the same chair he had sat in for the last 6 hours, and collapsed into it. He did not sleep. He simply watched the rise and fall of her chest, counting the beats of the monitor, terrified that if he looked away, the rhythm would stop. 3 nights passed like a fever dream. Adrian barely left the room. He bribed the nurses to bring him black coffee and ignored the calls lighting up his phone from his lieutenants. He had shed the blood-stained shirt for a fresh one brought by a courier, but he refused to leave her side. It was the middle of the 3rd night when the silence broke, not with noise, but with a confession. Adrian sat leaning forward, his elbows on his knees, his hands clasped together. His suit jacket was draped over the back of the chair, his sleeves rolled up to reveal the dark ink on his forearms. He reached out and took Maya's limp hand, his thumb tracing the blue veins on her wrist. "I never told you about the first time I saw a man die." He whispered to the unconscious room. The heart monitor beeped a steady, rhythmic accompaniment to his voice. "I was 8 years old. My father took me to the docks. He said I needed to learn how the world worked. He said mercy was a luxury we could not afford." Adrian looked at Maya's face, peaceful and still in her medically induced sleep. "I believed him for 30 years. Maya, I built a fortress out of bones and money because I thought that was the only way to be safe. I thought if I was the scariest thing in the dark could not hurt me." He squeezed her hand gently, careful of the IV line taped to the back of her hand. "Then you walked into my office with a feather duster and a terrifying amount of courage. You broke a glass and looked at me like I was going to hit you. And when I didn't, you looked at me like I was a puzzle you wanted to solve." He leaned closer, his voice cracking. "You make me feel like there is something left in me that is not rot. You make me feel like I could be just a man, not a kingpin, not a monster, just a man who wants to sit in a kitchen and drink water with you." He stood up slowly. The motion was stiff. His body was aching from sleeping in a chair, but he didn't feel it. He reached out with a trembling hand and brushed a strand of dark hair away from her forehead. His fingers lingered on her skin, tracing the line of her jaw, marveling at the warmth of her. He leaned down and pressed his lips to her forehead. It was a chaste, holy contact, a seal of protection. "If you wake up," he whispered against her skin, "I will burn this world down before I let it touch you again. I will tear it apart, brick by brick, until there is nothing left but us. Just stay with me, please." While Adrian held his vigil in the sterile safety of the hospital room, the wolves were circling outside, in the underground parking garage of the hospital, 2 levels below where Maya lay. A black sedan idled in the shadows. Luca sat in the driver's seat, the glow of a cigarette illuminating his sharp, worried features. The passenger door opened, and Russo, one of the older captains, slid inside. He smelled of rain and cheap cologne. "He is still up there?" Russo asked, his voice gravelly. "He has not left the room in 72 hours, Luca replied, exhaling a plume of smoke. "He has private security on the door. He's paying them out of his personal accounts, not the syndicate fund. This is bad. Luca?" Russo shook his head. "Vega is regrouping. He knows Adrian called a ceasefire. He thinks Adrian is weak, and if the streets think Adrian is weak, the wolves will come to eat." "He stopped the war for her," Luca said, gripping the steering wheel. "We had the advantage. We could have ended Vega that night, but he called it off because she was bleeding in his lap." Russo looked at Luca, his eyes dark in the gloom. "The girl is a liability, as long as she breathes. Adrian is compromised. He's not thinking like a boss. He's thinking like a desperate man in love." "I know," Luca said softly. "We need him back. Luca, the real Adrian, the one who would burn a city block to send a message. If we do not get him back, we're all dead." Luca flicked his cigarette out the window. The cherry sparked on the concrete floor before dying out. "What are you suggesting?" Luca asked, though he already knew. "If she dies from her injuries—" "It is a tragedy," Russo said with a shrug, "but tragedies make men angry, and we need an angry Adrian Cole right now. I will handle it." Luca lied. He wouldn't kill her. Not yet. But he knew Russo was right about one thing. Maya Ellis had to be removed from the equation, for her sake, and for theirs. Pain was the first thing Maya knew. It was a heavy, dull throb in her chest, radiating outward with every beat of her heart. She tried to take a deep breath, but her lungs felt tight. Restricted, she groaned, a low, ragged sound. "Maya?" The voice came from a great distance. It was familiar. It was safe. She forced her eyes open. The light was blinding at first, a blur of white and gray. Slowly, the shapes resolved, a ceiling tile, a silver rail. A face. Adrian. He was leaning over her, his face pale and drawn, heavy shadows under his eyes. He looked like he hadn't slept in a week. "Maya," he breathed. He scrambled up from the chair, his movements frantic. He reached for the button to call the nurse, but stopped when her fingers twitched against the sheets. "Adrian," she whispered. Her voice was a wreck, a dry rasp that hurt her throat. His eyes flew wide, relief flooding his features so intensely it looked like physical pain. He grabbed her hand, bringing it to his lips, closing his eyes as he pressed a kiss to her knuckles. "You came back," he choked out. "Thank God, you came back to me." "Water," she crooned. He moved instantly. He poured a cup of water and held the straw to her lips, supporting her head with a gentleness that made her want to cry. She drank greedily, the cool liquid soothing the fire in her throat. "Slowly," he said. She finished and let her head fall back onto the pillow. The memories were coming back now. "The kitchen, the gunman, the vase, the shot. You saved me," she whispered, looking at him. "No," Adrian said fiercely, shaking his head. "I almost got you killed. There is a difference." He sat on the edge of the bed, careful not to jostle the mattress. He was still holding her hand, refusing to let go, as if he needed the tactile proof that she was alive. Maya looked at him. Really looked at him. The arrogance was gone. The cold, untouchable mask of the Mafia boss had shattered, leaving behind a man who looked terrified and deeply in love. She remembered the way he had looked at her in the elevator, the way he had begged her to stay awake. "You stopped it, didn't you?" she asked softly. "The shooting. I heard you. Before I passed out, you told them to stop." Adrian looked down at their joined hands. "Yes. You could have lost everything," Maya said. "Your territory, your reputation. I did not care, Adrian said, looking up. His eyes were burning. I only cared about getting that ambulance to the door. I would have surrendered the whole city if it meant keeping your heart beating. Tears welled in Maya's eyes. They spilled over, hot and fast, rolling down her temples into her hair. The magnitude of what he had done crashed into her. He had paused a war for a hotel maid. Adrian reached out. With his thumb, he gently wiped the tears from her cheeks. His touch was reverent. "Don't cry," he whispered. "Please don't cry. I can't handle you in pain." Maya reached up. Her arm felt heavy, like lead, but she forced it to move. Her fingers curled around the back of his neck, pulling him down. "Come here," she whispered. Adrian hesitated, his eyes scanning her chest, her IVs. "I don't want to hurt you. Come here." He lowered himself slowly. He braced his hand on the mattress beside her pillow, taking his weight so he wouldn't press on her. Their faces were inches apart. Maya could see the gray flecks in his dark eyes. She could smell the coffee and soap on him. She closed the distance. Their lips met. It was not the passionate, desperate kiss of the rooftop. It was fragile. It was broken and beautiful. It tasted of salt from her tears and the bitter exhaustion that clung to him. Adrian made a low sound in his throat, his shoulders shuddering. He kissed her back with a terrifying tenderness, his lips moving softly against hers, pouring every ounce of his fear and gratitude into the contact. When they broke apart, they didn't move far. Their foreheads rested against each other. They breathed the same air. "You scare me," Maya whispered, her eyes closed. "I know," Adrian replied, his voice rough. "I am sorry, but losing you scares me more," she finished. Adrian froze. He pulled back just enough to look her in the eyes. The vulnerability on his face broke her heart. "I am done." "Maya," he said, his voice was firm, decisive. "I halted the war, and I am not starting it again. I am tired of the blood. I'm tired of watching innocent people get hurt because two men have egos too big for one city." "What are you saying?" she asked. "I am saying if you want me to walk away, I will walk away. I will leave the syndicate. I will leave Harborview. We can go somewhere where no one knows the name Cole." Maya looked at him. She saw the hope in his eyes, but she also saw the reality. He was a kingpin. You didn't just give 2 weeks' notice to the Mafia. If you just leave, Vega wins, she said. And if Vega wins, he will burn this city down. He won't stop with the soldiers. He will hurt the families. He will hurt the staff at the hotel. I don't care about them, Adrian said stubbornly. I care about you. I care about them, Maya said. She squeezed his hand, her grip weak but determined. You cannot just run. Adrian, that makes you weak. And if you are weak, they will hunt us down no matter where we go. Then what do you want me to do? He asked, desperation creeping into his voice. Find a way out, she said, a real way out, end it, but end it without becoming a butcher. Be the man I saw in the kitchen, the man who saves people. Adrian stared at her. Slowly. The wheels behind his eyes began to turn. The brilliance that had built an empire began to shift focus. He wasn't thinking about war anymore. He was thinking about strategy, outside the hospital. The final piece of the trap was being set. Darian Vega sat in a private booth at a diner across town. His phone buzzed. He picked it up and listened to the voice on the other end. She is alive, the informant whispered. Room 412, Harborview General. He has guards, but they are private contractors, not made men. Vega smiled. It was a cruel, triumphant expression. He's sitting by her bedside like a loyal puppy, Vega said. He's not watching the gates. Tonight, we end it, Vega commanded. We hit the hospital. We take the girl. If we have the girl. Cole will surrender everything. He has gone soft, and soft men die. Back in room 412, Adrian stood by the window, looking out at the city lights. He had been silent for 10 minutes. When he turned back to Maya, his face was changed. The exhaustion was still there, but the fear was gone, replaced by a cold, sharp resolve. I have a plan, he said. Maya watched him. What kind of plan? A dangerous one. He admitted. Vega thinks I am weak. He thinks I am distracted. I am going to let him believe that. He walked back to the bed and took her hand. I am going to give him exactly what he wants. Me and you. Maya's heart stuttered. What? He's going to attack the hospital, Adrian said calmly. I know he is. It is the only move he has left to break me. So I am going to let him come. Adrian, no. But he won't find us alone, Adrian interrupted. I am going to make a call I should have made 10 years ago. He pulled his phone out of his pocket. I have files. Maya. Evidence. Shipping routes, bank accounts, names of every corrupt judge and cop on Vega's payroll. And on mine. You are going to the police? Maya gasped. I am going to the FBI, Adrian corrected. I am going to trade my empire for your life. I will give them Vega on a silver platter. I will lure him into a trap, and when he springs it, the feds will be waiting. But you will be implicated too, Maya whispered. If you give them the evidence. I know, Adrian said. He looked at her with a sad smile. I won't be walking away from this free. Maya, prison is the price of the ticket. No, she cried, trying to sit up. No, Adrian, you can't. It is the only way, he said gently, pushing her back down to the pillows. If I go to prison, Vega goes down with me. The syndicate dissolves. The war ends, and you. You get witness protection. You get a new life, a safe life. But I won't have you, she sobbed. You will be alive, Adrian said fiercely. That is enough for me. He leaned down and kissed her forehead again. I have to go. I have to set the stage. I have to make sure Vega takes the bait. He straightened up and buttoned his jacket. He looked like the kingpin again, cold, efficient, ready to die. I will fix this. Maya, he promised, I will make sure you never have to look over your shoulder again. He walked to the door. Adrian, she called out, her voice breaking. He stopped. He looked back at her one last time. He etched her face into his memory, the bandage on her chest, the tears in her eyes, the love that he didn't deserve. Stay awake for me, he whispered. Then he opened the door and walked out. Maya watched the heavy door swing shut. The click of the latch sounded like the final nail in a coffin. She lay back against the pillows, staring at the empty chair where his jacket had been, and a cold, terrible feeling settled in her gut. He was walking into a fire, and she wasn't sure he intended to walk back out. The shipyard was a graveyard of industry. Rusted shipping containers were stacked like the bones of dead giants, casting long, jagged shadows under the harsh glare of the floodlights. The air smelled of brine, diesel, and impending violence. Adrian Cole stood in the center of the clearing, his hands deep in the pockets of his wool coat. He was alone, or so it appeared. In reality, 20 of his best men were hidden in the maze of containers, waiting for a signal that would never come. Adrian checked his watch. It was midnight. At this exact moment, a secure server in a basement 3 miles away was completing an upload. 10 years of ledgers, shipping manifests, bank routing numbers, recordings of bribes accepted by city councilmen and police captains. It was a suicide note for his empire, and a death warrant for Darian Vega. The gravel crunched behind him. Adrian did not turn. You sold us out. The voice was tight with betrayal. Luca stepped into the light, his gun drawn, but pointed at the ground. His face was pale, sweat beading on his forehead despite the chill in the air. I did what I had to do, Adrian said, turning slowly. You sent the files to the feds. Luca spat, shaking his head. I saw the transmission log on the encrypted server. You gave them everything. Adrian, the routes, the accounts. You gave them us. I gave them Vega, Adrian corrected calmly. And I gave them myself. Why? Luca roared, his voice cracking. For a hotel maid? For a girl who cleans toilets? For the only person who ever looked at me and saw a human being? Adrian replied. His voice was not loud, but it carried the weight of a final judgment. He took a step toward his oldest friend. It has to end. Luca, look around you. We are burning the city down. We killed a barista last week. We almost killed a dozen families in that apartment block. If we do not stop it now, there will be nothing left to rule but a cemetery. Luca raised the gun slightly. His hand was shaking. You are a traitor. The other lieutenants, they will kill you for this. Let them try, Adrian said. But listen to me. The FBI is 10 minutes away. They are coming for Vega. They are coming for me. If you walk away now, Luca, you have a chance. Go to the North safe house. Take the cash in the floor safe. Start over. Luca stared at him. He looked at the gun in his hand, then at the man he had followed into hell and back a dozen times. The conflict raged behind his eyes, loyalty against survival. Finally, with a curse. Luca lowered the weapon. He shoved it into his holster. You are a fool. Adrian, Luca whispered, but you are my brother. He turned to leave, pausing only once. Russo knows. He warned. He's not leaving. He's waiting for the shooting to start so he can put a bullet in your back. Watch your six. Luca disappeared into the shadows just as the headlights swept across the yard. 3 black SUVs rolled into the clearing, tires crunching on the gravel. They formed a phalanx, doors opening in unison. Darien Vega stepped out of the center vehicle. He looked immaculate in a white suit, a stark contrast to the grime of the shipyard. He smiled, spreading his arms wide. Adrian, he called out, I hear we are redrawing the map tonight. We are, Adrian said, standing his ground. Vega walked forward, his men fanning out behind him with military precision. He stopped 10 feet away, his smile not reaching his dead, shark-like eyes. He looked tired. Adrian, being a hero is exhausting work, isn't it? I am done with the games. Darien, Adrian said, I am offering you the west side, the docks, all of it, in exchange. The war ends tonight. Vega laughed. It was a dry, rattling sound. You are offering me what I have already taken. He sneered. You are weak, Cole. You hesitated. And in this world, hesitation is just a slow form of suicide. Vega checked his phone, his grin widening. Besides, I do not need your permission to take what I want. I already have my prize. Adrian went still. A cold knot of dread formed in his stomach. What are you talking about? Did you really think I would come here alone? Vega asked, tilting his head. Did you think I would leave your little girlfriend unguarded? Adrian's blood ran cold. The hospital. I have a team at Harborview General right now, Vega said, checking his watch. In fact, they should be walking into room 412 right about now. The hospital corridor was quiet. The night shift nurses were at their station, drinking coffee and charting. 4 men in gray maintenance coveralls pushed a large cart down the hallway. They kept their heads down, caps pulled low. They moved with a purpose that had nothing to do with fixing a leaky pipe. Inside room 412, Maya was awake. She lay in the dark, staring at the ceiling. The pain in her chest was a dull, constant ache, but her mind was racing. Adrian had been gone for hours. She heard it then, the squeak of rubber wheels outside her door. It stopped. Then, a low murmur of voices. Check the security feed. Cut the line. Maya froze. That wasn't a nurse. That wasn't the private security guard Adrian had hired. She hadn't heard the guard greet anyone. Something was wrong. Adrenaline, sharp and cold, flooded her system, overriding the pain medicine. She sat up, gasping as the movement pulled at her stitches. She scanned the room. She was trapped. She swung her legs over the side of the bed. Her feet hit the cold linoleum. Her knees buckled, but she grabbed the bedside rail. Hauling herself up, she needed a weapon. She looked around frantically. A plastic pitcher, a tray of food. Useless. Her eyes landed on the IV stand. It was heavy chrome, on wheels. She grabbed it. She disconnected the tube from her arm, blood welling up at the puncture site, but she didn't care. She dragged the stand toward the door, her breath coming in shallow, terrified gasps. She shoved the heavy recliner chair across the floor. It scraped loudly. Outside, the voices stopped. She knows, a voice hissed. Breaching, the shipyard exploded. Adrian didn't wait for Vega to finish gloating. He didn't wait for the signal. He drew his weapon and fired. The shot took one of Vega's bodyguards in the shoulder. Spinning him around, chaos erupted. Vega's men opened fire. Adrian's loyalists, hidden in the stacks, returned it. The air filled with the deafening roar of automatic weapons. Bullets sparked off the metal containers, whining like angry hornets. Adrian didn't seek cover. He ran. He sprinted toward his car, firing blindly behind him to keep heads down. He had to get to the hospital. He had to get to Maya. A bullet grazed his thigh, tearing through the fabric of his trousers, stinging like a whip crack. He stumbled but kept moving. Vega was screaming orders, taking cover behind his SUV. "Kill him! Don't let him leave!" Then, the night wailed. Sirens, dozens of them. Blue and red lights crested the hill overlooking the yard. A helicopter roared overhead, its spotlight cutting through the darkness, illuminating the battlefield in stark white relief. "Federal agents, drop your weapons!" a voice boomed from a loudspeaker. The ambush had worked, but Adrian didn't care about the victory. He dove into the driver's seat of his sedan, keying the ignition. The engine roared to life. He threw the car into reverse, tires screaming as he spun around, clipping a crate. Vega saw him leaving. The rival boss broke cover, raising a submachine gun, aiming for the windshield. Adrian didn't swerve. He floored the accelerator, driving straight at Vega. Vega dove out of the way at the last second, rolling across the gravel. Adrian clipped the back of Vega's legs with the fender, sending the man sprawling. Adrian slammed on the brakes. He rolled down the window. Vega was on the ground, reaching for his gun. Adrian raised his pistol. He had a clear shot at Vega's head. He could end it right here. He could be the executioner one last time. But then he saw the flashing lights of the FBI armored trucks smashing through the chain-link fence. "Let them have him," Adrian whispered. He fired a single shot into Vega's shoulder, pinning him to the ground. Vega screamed, clutching the wound. Adrian floored the gas. The sedan fishtailed, spraying gravel, and roared out of the yard, weaving through the incoming police blockade. He clipped a squad car, sparks flying, metal screeching against metal. "Stop the vehicle!" a police officer shouted. Adrian didn't stop. He merged onto the highway, the speedometer climbing to 100. Behind him, a trail of police cruisers peeled off to give chase. He didn't look in the rearview mirror. He looked at the city skyline. "Hang on, Maya," he prayed, gripping the wheel until his knuckles turned white. "Just hang on." Maya shoved the bedside table against the door, adding it to the barricade of the chair. The door handle rattled violently. "Open the door!" a voice shouted. Maya backed away, gripping the metal IV pole like a baseball bat. She was shaking so hard the metal rattled against the floor. Her chest felt like it was on fire. A heavy thud hit the door, then another. They were kicking it in. The wood splintered around the lock. "Maya Ellis," the voice taunted. "We know you are in there. Come out and we will make it quick." Maya didn't answer. She stood her ground in the center of the dark room, tears streaming down her face. She wasn't going to die cowering under a bed. If they wanted her, they were going to have to fight her. The door gave way with a crash. The barricade slid backward but didn't hold. A man in a gray jumpsuit squeezed through the gap. He had a knife in his hand, a long, serrated blade that caught the light from the hallway. He spotted her. He smiled. "There you are. Sweetheart." He stepped forward, kicking the chair out of his way. Adrian's car screeched to a halt at the hospital entrance, mounting the curb. The front bumper was hanging off. Steam hissed from the radiator. He kicked the door open and sprinted into the lobby. "Mr. Cole," a security guard shouted, reaching for his radio. Adrian ignored him. He vaulted the turnstile and ran for the stairs. He couldn't wait for the elevator. He took the stairs 3 at a time, his wounded legs screaming in protest, his lungs burning. 4th floor. He had to get to the 4th floor. He burst into the hallway. He saw the open door of room 412. He saw the shattered wood. "Maya!" he roared. He charged down the corridor. Inside the room, the attacker had cornered Maya against the window. She swung the IV pole, striking him in the shoulder, but he was too strong. He grabbed the pole and wrenched it from her weakened grip. Tossing it aside, he lunged. Adrian hit him like a linebacker. He tackled the man from behind, driving his shoulder into the attacker's spine. They crashed into the wall, knocking a framed picture to the floor. The knife skittered across the tiles. The man was big, heavy with muscle. He threw an elbow back, catching Adrian in the jaw. Adrian saw stars, but he didn't let go. He wrapped his arm around the man's neck, dragging him down. They wrestled on the floor, knocking over the bedside table. The attacker managed to flip Adrian over, pinning him. His hands went to Adrian's throat, squeezing. Adrian gasped, clawing at the man's face. His vision began to tunnel. Suddenly, there was a metallic clang. The attacker went rigid. His eyes rolled back in his head. He slumped forward, dead weight on top of Adrian. Adrian shoved the unconscious man off him and scrambled backward. Maya was standing there, holding the heavy oxygen tank she had pulled from the wall. She was panting, her hospital gown stained with fresh blood from her reopened stitches. "Maya!" Adrian choked out. He scrambled to his feet. He reached for her. She dropped the tank and collapsed into him. He caught her, sliding down the wall until they were sitting on the floor amidst the wreckage. He checked her frantically. His hands roamed over her arms, her face, her hair. "Are you okay? Did he touch you? Tell me he didn't touch you." "I am okay," she sobbed. "I am okay." She grabbed the lapels of his ruined coat. She pulled him closer. She kissed him. It wasn't a gentle kiss. It was fierce. It was desperate. It was the kiss of two people who had stood on the edge of the abyss and refused to jump. She kissed the blood on his lip, the sweat on his brow. She kissed him with a possessive urgency that told him she was alive. She was here, and she was his. Adrian held her tight, burying his face in her neck, shaking uncontrollably. "Police! Drop your weapons!" The hallway filled with uniformed officers. Guns were drawn, flashlights blinded them. Adrian didn't reach for a weapon. He didn't try to run. He slowly pulled away from Maya. He looked into her eyes one last time. "I kept my promise," he whispered. "I fixed it." He slowly raised his hands in the air. "Do not shoot," he shouted to the police. "I am unarmed. I am surrendering." Two officers rushed in, grabbing Adrian's arms, pulling him away from Maya. They slammed him against the wall, cuffing his hands behind his back. "Wait," Maya screamed, trying to reach for him. "Don't hurt him." Adrian looked back over his shoulder as they dragged him toward the door. He didn't look defeated. He looked free. "I love you, Maya," he shouted as they pushed him into the corridor. "I love you." She screamed back, collapsing against the nurse who had run in to help her. The trial of the century. They called it. Adrian Cole's testimony dismantled the Vega cartel in 3 weeks. It took down 2 judges, a senator, and half the police force's vice squad. It was a purge that scrubbed Harborview clean. Adrian pleaded guilty to racketeering and conspiracy in exchange for his cooperation and the toppling of the rival syndicate. The district attorney offered a deal, 15 years, eligible for parole in 7 and full witness protection placement for Maya Ellis. He took it without blinking. 8 months later, the coastal town of Pacifica was nothing like Harborview. It smelled of salt spray and pine trees. The pace was slow. The people were kind. Maya, now known as Elena, worked at a bed and breakfast overlooking the cliffs. She spent her days folding crisp white linens and baking muffins. But once a month, she took a long bus ride inland. The federal correctional facility was a low-security camp. There were fences, but no guard towers. She sat at a metal table in the visiting room. It was quiet. The guards stood by the doors, bored. The door on the far side opened. Adrian walked in. He was wearing a blue uniform. His hair was longer, softer. The tension that had defined his face for years was gone, replaced by a calm patience. He sat down across from her. He didn't say a word. He just reached across the table. Maya took his hands. They were rougher now, calloused from working in the prison garden. "Hi," she whispered. "Hi," he replied. There were no glass partitions, no phones, just them. "How is the ocean?" he asked. "It is loud today," she said, smiling. "The storm is rolling in. You can hear the waves crashing against the rocks from my bedroom window. It sounds like breathing." Adrian closed his eyes. He tilted his head, imagining it, imagining the salt air, imagining her. He opened his eyes and leaned forward. Maya leaned in too. He kissed her. It was slow, reverent. A worshipful touch of lips that spoke of months of waiting and a lifetime of promises kept. His thumb brushed circles on the inside of her wrist, right over her pulse point. 4 more years, he whispered against her lips. "I will be waiting," she promised. 4 years and 2 months later, The bus stop was just a bench on a dusty road at the edge of town. The sign was faded by the sun. Maya stood there, wearing a simple yellow sundress. Her hair was loose, blowing in the sea breeze. She checked her watch for the 10th time. The bus crested the hill, its brakes squealing as it slowed. The doors hissed open. Only one passenger stepped off. He was wearing jeans and a plain white t-shirt. He carried a small duffel bag over one shoulder. He looked older, a few silver strands in his dark hair, but his eyes were the same. Dark, intense, focused entirely on her. Adrian dropped the bag. Maya ran. She didn't care about the scar on her chest that pulled when she moved too fast. She didn't care about the tears blurring her vision. She collided with him. Adrian caught her, lifting her off her feet, spinning her around. He buried his face in her neck, inhaling the scent of her, sunshine and freedom. He set her down but didn't let go. He framed her face in his hands, looking at her as if she were a miracle he was still trying to understand. "You are here," she sobbed, laughing through the tears. "I am here," he said. He touched her forehead with his own. The world was quiet around them. No sirens, no gunshots, no war. Just the sound of the wind in the grass and the distant roar of the ocean. "I am done dreaming." "Maya," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "This time, I am staying awake for you. For us." Maya smiled, a radiant expression that banished the last shadows of Harborview. "Then let's go home," she said. She took his hand. He interlaced his fingers with hers, holding on tight. They turned and walked down the road together, two shadows stretching out in the afternoon sun, leaving the darkness behind them forever. Thank you so much for listening to this story. It has been an incredible journey writing the story of Adrian and Maya for you. I hope their journey from the bloody streets of Harborview to the quiet peace of the coast touched your heart. I would love to know where you are listening from today. Please leave a comment down below sharing your country or city. It is always amazing to see how far these stories travel. If you enjoyed this series, please consider subscribing to the Mafia Romance Stories channel. Your support means the world to me and helps me create more passionate, emotional stories for you to enjoy. Let me know in the comments what you thought of the ending. Did Adrian make the right choice? Until next time, stay safe and keep reading.